everyone, and welcome to another live broadcast from TrueFire Studios. I usually say that you're in for a treat, but I'm in for a treat today. We have one of my all-time guitar heroes here at TrueFire. Only like 20 years in the making, but who's counting? Wolf Marshall. Absolutely legendary educator, author, artist, player. He was nicknamed Rich Little of Guitar, kind of the leading impressionist in the education industry because he was able to emulate, either in audio or on video, the styles of the great. I'm going to read you some of his, hundreds of books and CDs and videos. He's performed the licks and stylings of Pat Martino, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Eric Johnson, B.B. King, Jeff Beck, Wes Montgomery, Eddie Van Halen, Eric Clapton, countless others, and best-selling CDs, best-selling videos. I mean, he virtually pioneered the, call it the digital, once you get it on CD, once you get it on video. I mean, he was doing it on books as well. I probably personally, I must own 100 Wolf Marshall educational publications of one kind or another. Also, very highly respected author. You've seen his articles in virtually every guitar magazine out there. And recommended by Kenny Burrell, legendary jazz guitarist Kenny Burrell. Wolf has been on the faculty of the UCLA Jazz Department since 2007, which blew my mind because, so much of the work I personally studied with Wolf, how do you go from Van Halen, Stevie Ray Vaughan to, all of the jazz greats? Well, you're going to see and hear that for yourself today. I am blown away and thrilled and proud to introduce you to Wolf Marshall, who's here recording his first TrueFire course, Uncaged Jazz Improv. Nice. So, man, I wasn't kidding. I'll take you to my house one day and show you my library. And there's like a shelf of just your stuff there. I mean, you were...
That's so nice of you.
You were so important and pivotal in getting so many of us, learning guitar, but also being inspired to do something that had to do with the teaching of music and the teaching of guitar. I mean, you really did single-handedly, I think, spark this whole industry, man. So,
well, you may turn my head with those comments. It's turning now.
We've met up so many times at NAMM shows and here, and it's not unusual. Usually it doesn't happen right away, but we're so thrilled to have you here. And,
thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
We're going to talk about the course that you brought to the table, which I remember you pitching Jeff and I on that over the phone several months ago. Mm-hmm. And we were blown away by the concept, of course, and even more blown away by what you brought to the table here. So it's an honor to be working with you in the context of TrueFire.
Thank you. Likewise, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to share with everybody.
Oh, man, you are the quintessential sharer of good stuff. How does it feel over the last couple of days?
Felt wonderful.
Yeah.
You don't know what to expect, but when you come in, it's very comfortable right away, and the empathy of the people is great. Yeah. I didn't drive them too crazy. Which I look for early on to make sure that, I've been a director on a lot of these things myself.
Yes, you
so
have.
I've kind of been on both sides of the glass, so to speak. So it's been a beautiful experience.
So you're saying Tommy's been okay to work with?
Tommy's been, he's been superb.
Yeah, and you've had Jeff in there as well. He
Jeff
can be
has been in
pretty
there as well.
difficult to work with too. Okay,
He's a
and
tough
then
guy.
Seth and Frank, they're a little quiet in the background, so I hope they didn't disturb you. Right?
They all added to the overall empathetic mood.
Awesome, man. So let's share. It was like, hey, what can we possibly do here together? That's something kind of new and fresh for you that takes advantage of the interactive medium. Tell everybody, the name of the course,
Okay,
and what it's all about.
Well, I call it the Uncaged system. Now, that's a play on words because the words cage system as a term have been around for a long time. In fact, I first heard Joe Pass mention it. But he gave me a strict admonition not to play it too strictly because that's not where his lines were coming from. But he did say he used it. Basically, it's referring to the chord shapes as a way of organizing the guitar. And it's been a system that's been in place probably since the 60s. Mm-hmm. But I know that a lot of the great older players have related to it. Really, anybody who plays the guitar should because it's chord-based. So the minute you get into the cage system, which maybe for your audience I should describe.
Please.
Basically, it's just the letters C-A-G-E-D is an abbreviation for the C major chord, the A major chord, the G major chord, the E major chord, and the D major chord. So they allow you to play, So when those shapes are played as a fingering, they become a form, meaning that you play things around those shapes. Mm-hmm. A lot of people just hear things like, they think of that, it's a G shape. Okay, I can hear the open strings and so on and so forth. And, that sounds like a C type of thing. And of course, that kind of stuff. It's a D shape. So there, a lot of folkies liked it, and it just became a way of organizing things on the guitar. Now, as you go into jazz and more advanced musics, you take the C, A, G, E, D shapes, and you play them linearly on the fingerboard. So, for instance, you play C here, but then the next time you play A, it's going to be a C here. Okay, then the G is going to be a C here, and the E is going to be a C here. And finally, the D is going to be a C here. So that's the way the cage system works.
Okay.
Now, what I like to do with the uncaged system is because there are gaps between those forms, is I like to connect them. But the thing is, I like to connect them with the language phrases. And that means we can call them licks, we can call them melodies, we can call them anything you like, but they are the melodies that are inside the language of a music. And jazz, with its rich harmony, has many different forms of those chords. Mm-hmm. So what I did in my course was to convert everything to minor. I found it works really well as an overlying system. But of course, you can use any kind of chord. For my course, I use the minor as a mode in which to place the C, A, G, E, D. So from there, I just showed how to connect the shapes and make it more or less continuous. Should you decide to play, you don't have to play in a restricted position. Instead, you migrate comfortably up and down the fingerboard. Basically, any place you place your finger, you will be able to play some kind of a melody. Mm-hmm. That's the goal. And that frees you. So in that point, you're uncaged.
So can you give us an example of the uncaged mechanisms?
Yeah, the uncaged mechanisms, again, like I said, I converted to G minor. There's a G minor 7. Here's a G minor 7 here. The next G minor 7 would be here, then a minor 7 here, and finally you get all the way up to here. So those shapes, as you could see, were up and down the fingerboard. So I would take a melody and, again, bear in mind it's a language line. There's going to be several elements. It's not just one scale. It's not just one particular sound. Because in jazz and in a lot of good improvisation, you use a mixture of those sounds. So what I did, for example, the first one is I'm thinking about connecting this chord to this chord. And in the movement, you'd have... And through that, I went from the considered sort of, I guess you'd call it like a melodic minor type of sound. Now it's a pure sound, just an arpeggio. But by doing that arpeggio in that fingering, it puts you right into this. So now this space has been filled in. Okay, that takes you from the second to the third, and from the third you go to the fifth.
Very cool.
And in between, there's a fourth. If someone's going to ask, what about the fourth? Didn't you skip 2, 3, 5? What about 4?
Yeah.
Well, at that point, the other language element that comes into place is using what Joe Pass used to refer to as back cycling. You just go to its dominant chord, but it creates a lot more interesting colors. So you integrate that into the lines. And so if you wanted to play this chord, which everybody knows from Purple Haze and other tunes, you have a melody that easily translates in that fingering, which is between this and that. See, third and fifth. So this is in the fourth. So I got right back in, and if I put my finger on the fourth fret and I was thinking G minor, there it is.
Beautiful. Do we have a track you can, Tommy, do we have milestones maybe?
Yeah, we can play over milestones.
Let's roll that track, Wolf, and show us that in action.
Okay.
1, 2, 2, 2.
Nice.
Something like that.
Something like that. And so, you know, if you had to sum up the value of understanding the uncaged approach, how would you sum that up?
I would sum it up in one word: freedom. The idea that you are not bound to a set of regimented fingering shapes, and therefore your ideas can now exist anywhere you place your hands. It just takes a little practice, some perseverance, and mainly pursuing the fact that it's the language. You're not trying to put scales in there, and you're not trying to put necessarily contrived licks that really function best in only 1 or 2 positions, but actually free yourself and play melodically with a sense of being more in tune with what you're hearing and feeling. So freedom, that's more of an elaboration than you probably hoped for, but freedom.
No, it's exactly what we hope for. So, you know, what we find all the time, myself included as a student of guitar, is we tend to get locked in boxes, you know.
Yeah.
Even if we know more than one box, we're going from one box to the other. And what we felt, you know, what you're saying resonates with us because getting into unfamiliar territory seems to breed creativity because it's not muscle memory and you don't have your lick vocabulary to fall back on. So I think that's one of the key benefits for this particular course.
Well, thank you.
So, when you look at, we can only touch on, in the confines of the hour that we have, a few examples from the course, but the way Wolf presents the curriculum, for example, section 1 was Uncaged mechanisms, and there's a series of demonstrations on chord forms, additional chord colors, blues and pentatonic colors, linking chords across the fretboard, and then a performance demonstrating the key learnings from those lessons. That's just section 1. We just touched on Uncaged mechanisms, which also very similarly has 6 different demonstrations of transitions between the positions, and then he puts it into play over a track. We talk about the uncaged dominant for a minute, if you would. Is that a similar approach?
Well, it is, because once you've uncaged your ideas, they can be relating to almost anything. So a dominant and a minor are very closely related, particularly if you look at it in a blues context. If you looked at a C blues, let's say, and played this chord here, let's say this is the basic chord, turn it to a 7th, and now we go to make it a minor. It's right in the same space. So those blues ideas can be enhanced by mixing minor sounds from the uncaged system into a blues framework. If you had a blues line, I went and dipped into G minor to get those extra notes. Same with if I played a normal pentatonic. Hitting that note allows me to think, to launch into that particular uncaged idea, which is a simple motif which implies a 9th chord. So you do that in different places on the neck. If you're playing down here, you were playing a normal C7 chord like this. In a blues, you'd also hear. But instead of just playing your usual, you might have now that concept instead. So you mix the colors, you match, and you try to expand. The idea is to expand your blues vocabulary. Sometimes it's 1 or 2 tasty notes coming from an unexpected place that makes a blues solo have some new kind of power to it.
Let's roll Chitlins and see.
That was a great tune.
Blues.
I have a story about
okay.
Chitlins.
Go ahead.
The track you're going to hear is my band playing the backing track for me, which I use a lot of times on gigs and in clinics and such. But the first time I actually played that in concert was with Kenny Burrell, who wrote that song.
That's
right. But it even gets crazier than that. Kenny said, I want to try something special for my 75th birthday concert. So he tagged me to assemble 5, 6 other guitar players to play Chitlins with him.
Really?
On stage in a rhythm section. So we had Calvin Keyes, a wonderful jazz player, Paul Jackson Jr., well known for his R&B sessions and jazz work, Anthony Wilson with Diana Krall, Jacques Lejour, was all over the world, and Wayne Goines. And myself, and we all played Chitlins on stage at UCLA's Royce Hall with Kenny.
Man.
So I'll always have that memory with him.
Of course.
Of that. And that's the first time I played it.
That's amazing.
Because I normally didn't do that on a gig. After that, I started doing it on a gig.
Well, let's do it here.
Okay. bit of blues, and I tried some key places to stick in where I would use uncaged possibilities. And one of them, of course, is in that transition when you go from a C chord to the F chord. You really want to come into that with power, so I would use to enter that space.
Nice.
And that's where the caged really comes in helpful. Uncaged really helped
Uncaged.
me because I'm able to navigate that
Yeah.
space.
So we were talking. You've been here now. This is your second day, so you've done a lot of work on the course, and we're definitely in the jazz vein here. But
Yeah.
one of the topics that is how applicable the uncaged system could be for really any style, any guitarist who wants to understand and navigate the fretboard in different ways.
Remember that you're using language, so you can plug any ideas into the uncaged system. I'm using jazz ideas because I like the harmonically rich environment. But one chord you could play. Milestones was one chord. Now a lot of rock vamps can be one or two chords a lot of times, and so you could play that stuff. You just have different fingering possibilities. It opens up your mind to where you can put your fingers and get different sounds.
Right.
What you plug into that is going to be really up to your personal sense of taste and the style of music you're in, the genre you play, that type of thing.
Yeah, and we are, ultimately we opted to call it Uncaged Jazz Improv, but I just and even when we presented, we're going to make very clear whatever style of music you play, if you feel you're sort of getting locked in the different boxes we all get locked into, this really does unlock the box
Well,
for
hopefully,
you.
yeah. If you give it a chance and plug in your own, after you learn the basics, the fundamentals of how you move, you can plug in any ideas. I mean, the
Yes.
Kenny Burrell tune we just played was really just a 3-chord blues.
Yeah.
And nothing fancy, no fancy 2 chords or altered 5s or any of that stuff. So it was as plain as could be, and yet you could stay as simple as you want and occasionally plug in something, and it's just very tasteful, very different.
This is a great example because, we have a lot of blues players here at TrueFire, and why not? There's a lot of great blues educators, a lot of great blues content, but probably the most popular request is something around, how do I jazz up my blues a little bit? And I would suggest if you want to jazz up your blues a little bit, this is a great way to do it.
Well, hopefully. If you give it a chance, especially if you play very traditional blues, what you'll find is no matter how simple and basic your blues is, if you're playing a B.B. King type of... still do that. You can easily migrate back and forth between any other kind of flavor. I call it a flavor or a color. Those are ways to look at it. I don't think of those as specifically a lick. I have a harmonic context for it in my mind, like I'm thinking of it as a minor chord or dominant chord or some type of substitution perhaps. It really just depends on your orientation, what you're going to hear harmonically. Hopefully knowing that you can play anything on the fingerboard opens up your mind.
Cool,
to new
man.
sounds.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, little housekeeping.
Okay.
First off, we usually ask people to chime in and tell us where they're tuned in from.
Okay.
So, I want you to know you have fans right now tuned in live from Russia, North Sweden, Rome, Italy, Manchester, UK, New Braunfels, Texas, North Carolina, Montara, California, San Diego, Green Bay, Rowlett, Texas, Montreal, Denver, Las Vegas, Oldsmar, Florida. It's right around here. Winnipeg, Morocco, Calgary, Alberta, and our friend from Transylvania is tuned in right now. If we haven't shouted out to you, please, just tell us where you're from on the chat, and we'll do a shout out. But isn't that crazy, man?
Well, I don't know how to speak Texan, but I would like to say to the folks in Russia, очень приятно, мой дорогий.
There you go. I'm not sure what that meant, but
That
I'm
meant
sure
it's
it was
awfully pleasant to be with you, my friends.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So we always reflect, and Wolf, you remember back, in the old days, man, when there was books, and then we got audio CDs, and everything was kind of very contained geographically, you know, and it was unheard of that we could join together from all over the world in all these different time zones and share our love and our passion for music. And somebody like yourself, that maybe perhaps somebody in Russia or in Transylvania would never get a opportunity to kind of get up close and personal.
Right.
And what is your feeling about how technology has kind of facilitated the growth and expansion of music education?
Well, I think I've seen it from the ground floor, because when I started in education, there was only cassette tapes, VHS tapes, and print magazines, and songbooks.
Yeah.
The songbooks were not yet transcription books. There were a few stabs at a Led Zeppelin solo here and there, but really they weren't transcription books in the sense that we think of them today.
No.
So I emerged from what I guess would be called the hardwired thing into the digital thing, which happened in the 80s, which is kind of, it's interesting that happened simultaneously with the way that the music education business happened. When I first started doing videos and audios, it was cassette and VHS. And then by the end of that decade, the 80s, we were already starting to do digital formats. And then I saw it grow into online stuff in the 90s. I worked with Microsoft on their EMP project and did a lot of things online with the Paul Allen Group. And the Microsoft people were building that up. So it was getting, the internet, and Line 6, I worked with them for 6 years. And a lot of other things like that. Of course, by that point, everything was DVDs. And so you could buy almost anything in a DVD format, which before you couldn't. So I saw that, plus all of the ways that you notate. It kept getting better and better.
Yes,
of course, you have the interactive tablature and all this kind of fancy programming that's available now.
And now, you know, you look at, you know, TrueFire's thing. We're syncing tab and notation to the video, allowing you to loop anything, slow anything down without loss of pitch, and drop down a fretboard if you need that too, you know.
What a great tool for guitar players.
You know, it's just incredible. It's amazing. You know, technology can certainly be a disruptor, a la the record business and royalties, you know, but at the same time, it's like, you know, the Gutenberg press, that technology, when it was invented, allowed composers to print sheet music so they can make a living teaching, you know? So it's all good, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, though, it's all about good content and good teachers, right?
Hopefully that'll always prevail.
Yeah. So the other little bit of housekeeping is underneath the video. You guys will find a couple of links. The first link leads you to a pre-order page where you can order Uncaged Jazz Improv and save 25% using that promo code WolfLive. It's only good for 48 hours. Don't delay. You know, pick this thing up. This is a big one. And underneath that is a trivia question. Did anyone ask you about this trivia question?
They did ask me.
Okay. So the trivia question, we're going to give away $100 gift card you know, we're going to randomly select someone who answered this correctly. Do not put the answer in the chat thread, please. That'll lower your odds and kind of ruins the game. You click on the link, you go answer it over there, and we'll randomly select someone, give them a $100 gift card. And don't you answer this either, Wolf, okay?
Not me.
Wolf arranged and performed the guitar parts for a Burt Bacharach theatrical production in 2011. What was the title of that show? One more time. Wolf arranged and performed guitar parts, all of the guitar parts, for a Burt Bacharach theatrical production in 2011. Name the title of that show, click the link, put your answer there, and we'll pull the lucky winner at the end.
Let me just make one little tiny detail apparent. In arranging, Burt had all the music written. So when I worked with him, a lot of it was already very playable on the guitar. The arranging occurred for a piece called Hush that was a climactic piece at the very end, sort of a pinnacle of where it's going, and he wanted an acoustic guitar intro. So when I say arrange, he wanted me to realize his piano parts as a guitar part. And so we sat there and worked on the classical guitar, me the classical guitar and him at the electronic keyboard for a number of sessions to get that together. And because that was a pivotal piece, that was the kind of the big closing section.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
we wanted to be a guitar
what was
solo.
it like working with him?
Tremendous. He's a legend. But the reason that I had an even deeper respect for him walking away than I had before, because of course I heard all his great tunes, "Walk On By" and "Alfie" and all, so many great songs. I could just go on and name, the countless ones. But anyway, he has a quality in him as a musician and a producer, and as a way of dealing with other musicians, where he wants to make you play better. I noticed right away he has some producers I've worked with are very, very tight and very disciplinarian and very aggressive about forcing their ideas. His ideas were very firm, very productive, and very solid, but the way he presented them, he just made you want to play better and better to get closer to his ideas. I can see why he is who he is, because there was a tremendous feeling of that in the way that he conducted himself with musicians. He just knew how to get the best out of people.
Love that. What a great experience.
Yeah, it was tremendous.
Okay, so a last bit of housekeeping is if you have any questions you'd like us to ask Wolf, please post them in the chat, and we'll get to them at the end. And I can't think of anybody better to answer any question you might have about guitar and learning guitar. All right, let's get back to Uncaged. How about minor conversions in the 2.5?
Okay,
Vamps.
this sort of builds, in this course, everything builds onto the next level. So you learn the basic minor sounds, you learn how to connect them, and then the next step is what are you going to do with that? Okay, you can play modal music on one chord and be very happy. But then you go off, like I said, play into 3-chord blues. Add it into your the Chitlins track could be anything. That could be any 3-chord blues, so standard. The other step now involves taking a minor chord and turning it into something else. So for example, we saw a little bit of that, the G minor becoming C7. The other possibility is when you play F minor to B flat 7, it can also be this chord, which is seen as a 9th chord, but it's also a D minor 7 flat 5. So now you're hooking the Uncaged universe into 3-chord shapes that are common, and that gives you places where you can springboard into new areas of imagination.
Nice.
So a lot of times that's really a nice color to play as an alternate color for like an R&B groove that vamps a lot, or a Latin groove that vamps on 2 chords.
How about we roll that Masquerade track and see how you apply it to that?
Okay,
which is just a 2-chord vamp.
Yeah, it would be F minor to B flat 7 or 13 or 9. The basic, I always think of just F minor 7 to B flat 7, and then the colors 9th, 13th. Those just come with it. That's just decoration. But the basic chord I still think of as a 7th, and then all these other colors get to be part of that basic sound.
Cool. Here we go. Very nice, man. And that's a vamp you'll encounter across every style of music a
Pretty
million
much.
times.
You can make that into a funk vamp.
Yeah.
This is like a slow R&B groove, but
Yeah.
speed it up and give it a funky James Brown kind of thing. It becomes a different feel, but still the same concept.
Yeah.
And like a lot of Latin grooves are based on a 2/5, so
Yeah.
same idea exactly.
Yeah, it's very cool. I have to tell you. So first of all, you have I'm just scanning our chat here, and so many of us, including myself in the list of beautiful people on here, are talking about books of yours. One gentleman, if I can find him, learned how to play Satch Boogie from
Oh
one
yeah,
of your
Satch
things.
Boogie, sure.
And I was going to do this in the intro, but I have a list of it's 4 pages long, right? But I mean, you've done Albert King, Eric Clapton, Best of Cream, all the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Queen, The Doors, Mark Knopfler, the Beach Boys, Pink Floyd, Aerosmith, Eric Johnson, all kinds of acoustic guitar things. Just crazy. Ingve, Billy Sheehan on bass, So one of the questions that I see a lot of people asking is how, what was the evolution? Because I know you're passionate about jazz. You're passionate about music, but you've been very passionate about jazz. So how, tell us that story.
Starting at which point?
Well, was there a point where you just were more attracted to jazz guitar?
No, not really. It came out of, I'll tell you, when I was in high school and I was learning all the Rolling Stones and Beatle tunes and all of the Hendrix and Eric Clapton and all that stuff that was in the milieu, Jeff Beck. Those were my favorites when I was a teenager. And then I also always got hooked into the blues. So when Eric Clapton put out his Blues Breakers album, that turned a lot of things around for me, made me less of a rock player and more of a blues player. At that time, I love all kinds of rock still. The Satch Boogie is still one of my favorites. Randy Rhoads, all that stuff. That's it goes without saying. But I found that a lot of my friends were getting stuck in only 1 or 2 forms of music based on a very narrow range of tastes. But a couple of other friends I had were also playing piano and taking guitar lessons from seasoned players, and there were a ton of them in LA. Teaching, that work in studios, and they would teach. Anyway, one of my friends lent me a Joe Pass record. I didn't understand any of it, but I loved the sound of it. It was called For Django, still one of my favorites. In fact, that first track off of that album was called Fleur d'Ennui, which is Flower of Boredom. Second side, first track, is the one I happened to hear first. And I recently, just August of last year, got a chance to play that track with John Pisano, who was the rhythm guitarist for Joe.
No kidding.
And people can see that online. That's on YouTube.
Wow.
So that was like a bucket list thing for me to do. When I did that, I said, wow, it's like one less thing. That's something I had to do. Anyway, I transcribed Joe's stuff and played live and on top of that. But then coming from that point, okay, I heard Joe, I heard Wes Montgomery, and I heard Howard Roberts. And again, it was way above my head. Still hardcore blues. But then one day, I met a guitarist who played formerly with Jethro Tull. His name was Mick Abrams. He was on the first Jethro Tull album. And he had a version of blues guitar that incorporated a lot of jazzy, harmonic, unusual licks, diminished scales, and so on and so forth. And when I met him, because we were all playing on the Sunset Strip, he's playing at the Whiskey, I was up at Gazzari's. Anyway, the point is, you could just go and hang with those people. There was no mobbing. I mean, they were just guys playing in town. So there was none of that paparazzi type of stuff happening around him. When I met him, I said, what do I do to get to sound more like you? And he said, go out and buy yourself a Kenny Burrell album.
Really?
In his Cockney accent. So the next day I bought a Kenny Burrell album after going to Wallach's Music City. I went to the demo booth and I played Blues, the Common Ground. And it just spoke to me. Blues, the common, that's what I'm talking about. Blues and jazz, common ground. And so from that point on, it was like the two were married together.
And now you're actually teaching with Kenny.
Yeah. That's
that
an amazing thing. After we played that concert together, I told you about with Chitlins, because I had not worked with him yet, other than having a couple of conversations about the book I did. That one in the West Montgomery, he was really kind enough to supply me with some background information that had never been known, like what Wes's gear was. Happened to be Kenny's amp and Kenny's guitar for that session. But anyway. We got together, and after we played, he called me a little bit later and said, "Could you please come and work with me at UCLA? Would you like to do that?" I said, "Of course." I mean, he's like one of my heroes. He's been one of my heroes since I was 18 years old. So I mean, I'll find a way to get up there if I have to hitchhike.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I did, and I've been there since 2007.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Also, you were, Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, back in the day. You would in that crowd as well, where they were playing?
Jimmy was a different thing. That was a one-time deal when I played the Teenage Fair, and I was at the Sun booth.
Yeah.
And Jimmy was checking out Sun, so he just went by, and I got to meet him. I got to play a Blues Breakers tune,
Really?
and I think he dug it for a minute, and then he went off. I never got to actually talk to him.
Yeah.
But he was just hanging.
Yeah.
Who else did you mention?
Jim Morrison.
Oh, Jim Morrison. Well, yeah. When we played the Sunset Strip, there were basically 3 rock clubs on the same side of the street. There was the Whiskey A Go-Go, the Galaxy, and Gazzari's. And we were the house band at Gazzari's for a while, the band I was in as a teenager. And right down the street, about a half a block away, was the Galaxy, where the Doors played. And so Jim Morrison was a hardcore blues fan.
Yeah.
He would just wander up, and he'd see us play a blues tune, because we were the only band at that time on the Sunset Strip doing straight blues. Kind of in the Eric Clapton Blues Breakers vein.
Got it.
And we did these, 13-minute long versions of "I Can't Quit You, Baby," and I think that intrigued him.
Nice.
And then on the other side was the Whiskey, of course. And so we'd all migrate from one place to the other. We met all those guys, Buffalo Springfield, and, Crosby, Stills, and Nash. They were all right in there. They were all hanging together.
Killer, man.
Yeah.
What a great
Just by Laurel
kind of-
Canyon, it's right there.
What a great way to grow up.
Oh,
with,
yeah. I was,
you know?
at the time, I sort of just took it for granted, because there was just another guy working in a club coming up and seeing me work.
Yeah.
And then the Doors hit really big.
Yeah, then they did. Yep. Okay, back to Uncaged. There's so much we can talk about. I'm just trying to keep us on track here.
Okay.
Let's do, how about exotic sounds?
Okay, well, when you get past the kind of substitutions or conversions I was just telling you about, where your B flat becomes F minor, and then your F minor becomes D minor 7 flat 5, that forms sort of a little, what I would call nexus of 3 sounds that are still sort of in the diatonic vein. They're still kind of F minor. When you get exotic, you get into notes that are more chromatic and have different harmonic, more advanced connotations, like flat 9s and sharp 5s and stuff like that. Those are what I would call some of the exotic sounds. So for instance, if you played, let's say you're in F minor again, like we were earlier, your F minor might now contain this. That sound. Conversely, if you said that sound but with a B flat bass, now becomes a very exotic chord called a B flat 9 sharp 11, but it's still F minor. So if you know your Cage stuff, you just make that conversion into the exotic world, and it's there. So I provided a lot of phrases that have that quality and the content of that exotic sound, the harmonic minor and melodic minor sounds. And they're especially effective when you're playing over a 5-chord, which I believe I used a minor blues to demonstrate with a 5-chord how it would work with that particular sound. In a blues, you tend to, if you're playing a blues in F minor, you tend to have the F minor going to a B flat, F back to F minor, and then you have G minor 7, flat 5 to C7. So already we're dealing with some more exotic chords, but this one almost always has a lot of tension to it, so that when you get back to F minor, it's very much like you've moved, because the tension and the dissonance keeps you going, and then when you land at home base, it feels like, I've arrived. So we use it for that purpose a lot of times in the minor blues, to push things forward, so you're not just playing diatonically or modally or pentatonically. It gives you like a little extra color, and it's particularly, like I said, good with minor keys, because a minor key can have, a so-called Dorian sound, so-called harmonic minor sound, and each one of those have their own harmonic characteristics. Like, for example, the harmonic minor is the only natural existing scale that has augmented and diminished seventh chords in it. And that's just a reality. Other than that, you'd have to play a whole tone scale or a diminished scale, and those are synthetic scales. They're not like in the diatonic family. So that's a very important type of sound that I like to cultivate. And works very well, like I said, in minor blues. So that's a good way to start with the exotic quality.
Cool. So let's roll Berks Works.
Berks Works. This is the
And
Dizzy
apply
Gillespie
that.
minor blues in F minor, and I'll demonstrate particularly going from F minor to F7 to go to B flat minor. That's the first exotic point. The second exotic point is when you go to a G minor 7 flat 5. That would be the other spot where you could hear me play some colors there, flat 9 and augmented fifth and whatnot. So those are the places where you would listen for. And you contrast it with your minor playing, whether it's diatonic, whether it's pentatonic, whether it's just regular blues licks. And you contrast those points, and it creates a little more of an interesting story in your playing.
Beautiful. Tell us that story.
Okay, I'll do my best.
You could keep going, couldn't you?
So there were some spots in there. Yeah, I actually could. There were some spots in there that I tried to signal the audience where that was happening, like the transition there. And of course, with the Uncaged thing, I'm allowed to do it here too. So I have that ability to play it in a lot of places. That's one of the things I found that a lot of my students were struggling with. They knew some of the pet licks, but to find them in other places so that you don't feel lost when you're performing or just jamming with people. You go to that other chord and you put your hands in an unfamiliar place and your idea goes right out the window. And it's all about learning how to use some of the non-chord tones. And that's one of the things that is important in the exotic phase of this. I call it exotic. It's just more advanced harmony. But it's really, I guess you could say it's exotic because we think of the harmonic minor as being something like Miserlou. Right. You know, we get this kind of almost Far Eastern sound with it or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the way I would look at it, as a way to color those chords in a minor blues, and then therefore any other minor tune. Summertime or Alone Together, Angel Eyes, all those tunes would benefit from having that coloration.
So, I've noticed some folks, tune in on time, then they tell their friends, and a bunch of folks are tuning in late. We're covering, we're here with Wolf Marshall. We're talking about his first TrueFire, certainly not his first course. Maybe, what is this, the 500th course you've done? But certainly his first TrueFire course, Uncaged Jazz Improv. For those of you that may have missed the beginning, this whole thing goes on demand in TrueFire's channel, like 2 minutes after we end. Start at the beginning, watch the whole thing. But you've done a great job of showing how you presented the curriculum, explaining the concepts, picking one kind of concept and creative approach at a time, demonstrating that, and then putting it to work over a backing track. And what's cool about these backing tracks from my perspective is, you know, none of them have very complicated changes. All of them are the types of changes you'll encounter in the popular songbook in a variety of styles. We've got a jazz kind of theme going here, but this stuff applies to any style of music. And it just applies if you want to understand the fretboard a little bit easier.
Right.
If you want to get out of the box, okay, which is what that's a rite of passage. We
Think
all have
outside the box.
Right, exactly. This is the way to do it, and you're getting it straight from, you know, one of my heroes in music education, Wolf Marshall.
Oh, thank you. That's very
Wolf,
kind.
you have, you know, there's a lot of people who likewise consider you a hero of theirs.
Wow.
I want to give you some more shout outs. Harlem from the Netherlands is tuned in.
Oh,
Berkeley, Pittsburgh, East Finland. You've been there recently? I've been to West Finland. I haven't been to East Finland.
Oh, well.
Illinois, Chicago, Eugene, Oregon, Arkansas. A lot of great players in Oregon.
Oh, yeah.
Arkansas, Australia, Panama City, San Francisco, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, Treviso, Italy, Virginia Beach, Galesburg, Michigan, NYC. Say hello to your fans out
Well,
there.
thank you so much. I appreciate you guys tuning in. It's just great to be with you. I wish I could meet all of you personally. Maybe, hopefully, in the future, I'll be able to.
And a shout out here from Ice Pick Licks, who
Ice Pick
really,
Licks. Love it.
You know, says, and I'm using that to represent dozens and dozens of similar comments in a live chat. You know, it's great to be able to say thanks to Wolf for all those years of transcriptions and books. I'm sure a lot of us learned to play guitar from his books and projects over the years.
Thank you.
It's so true. Let me ask you this. Like,
You guys are my Grammys.
you know, how does it feel to know that you have sparked, you know, you've given the gift of music to, I don't know, millions of people probably. And out of those millions of people, there's probably some I know I've spoken to some very popular marquee artists who credit you with getting them down the road. How does that feel, man?
Oh, I just said, you guys are my Grammys.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's the rewards you get for those lonely hours with a transcription machine, whether it's a cassette tape or you used to use reel-to-reels or digital slow-mo, whatever it is, and working all that stuff out and turning it into something that hopefully will nourish your musical soul.
Yeah.
That's good for me to know.
And, you know, you've done a lot of transcriptions for sure, but you know, the thing that you bring to the table right from the very beginning is, you know, explaining what's happening. And, you know, it's not just the notes, right? If you understand why those notes are there or why they're being phrased in that way and what to do with the right or the left hand, that's as important as the notes themselves, right? So
sure.
That's what makes you very special, man.
Well, thank you. A lot of that is, you know, it's a combination of experience, doing this since I was basically a teenager, and then you know, having some good education and training. So I would just keep everybody on the path. Just keep improving yourself. Get more vocabulary. You'll be surprised. You know, I mean, you couldn't have a Steely Dan without the jazz influence. You couldn't have Mick Abrams without it. And Jethro Tull's first album. You couldn't have a lot of guys. I mean, there's so many players that have smatterings or even big helpings of jazz in their playing. Stevie Ray Vaughan, when I met with him, he was all over Grant Green. That's what he wanted to talk about, was Grant Green.
He's got a lot of jazz influence in
he
his
liked
playing.
Kenny. He was a big fan of Kenny Burrell, too.
And then you get, you know, even blues players, you know, Robin Ford.
Oh, Robin Ford,
has
of
a
course.
heavy jazz influence.
Robin
Larry
Ford is,
Carlton, of course.
all those guys. That's a given. I put Carlos Rios in there, too. Fantastic player.
Do you know who absolutely loves you as much as we and many also? Henry Johnson.
Oh, Henry,
know?
he's one of my favorite people of all time.
He's incredible. You know?
Fantastic player. I mean,
He
he's
really
an
is.
untouchable player, but
Yeah.
he's also just a wonderful human being.
Yeah. Every time he's been in here a couple times now, and it's like, man, you got to get Wolf. Get that one. I said, would you please call him and just nudge him, please, to get in here? And
He was the one that was responsible for me getting out of doing so much studio stuff on my own and writing and getting that back on stage and playing.
Yeah.
He would come out and visit with me and stay with me, and then we'd do gigs together. And he was prodding me. You shouldn't just be doing this stuff. Get out there and play a little bit. So around 2005, 6, he's getting me to do that.
Thank you, Henry, for doing that. And I know it brings you a lot of joy too to get out there and play.
Yeah, it's a real thrill. I mean, to meet people too and be able to play and share live with them. It's great.
Oh, I see Chris Bono is chiming in. Do you know Chris by any chance? He's a TrueFire educator. He's a big fan of yours too.
I have met him at shows,
a lot
I
of
think.
books. And
he's a wonderful player.
He was teaching at Berkeley. We call him the professor of the deep. I mean, his educational waters run really deep.
Yeah.
And we talk about who some of our favorite educators were. Of course, Ted Green will pop up.
Ted Green,
but your name always pops up, man. So
thank you. It's an honor to be in the midst of those people.
Oh, man. So here's a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
Greg Baboski wants to know, so you evolved, kind of from the rock thing and presumably lighter gauge strings to, what are you playing now, string-wise?
Well, on this
gauge-wise?
particular guitar, because I do still want to have some flexibility in bending, I keep it with 12 set.
Okay.
A 12 set Tomastic Infeld strings.
Okay.
Those are the strings.
And when you were doing a lot of rock, what gauge?
I used 10s mostly.
Okay.
10s on a Strat, or on a Les Paul, I might go to an 11.
Okay.
Depending on the artist, because if you play Yngwie's stuff, you have to go lighter, because he like lighter strings on higher action and a scallop neck.
And if you were to play Stevie Ray stuff?
Stevie Ray liked heavier gauge strings, but you got to tune down to get the atmosphere of his playing. It's not, I mean, you can get a facsimile, but if you really want to cop Stevie, you've got to get as close to his variables as possible.
When you did a book on any of these artists, would you work with them? Would you get any feedback from them after?
In some cases.
Yeah.
Satriani, certainly. Joe Satriani. Steve Vai. Let me think. Other artists after, Pat Martino. Like I said, Kenny Burrell. B.B. King.
What did Pat think of your work?
Pat, I've known Pat since 1976.
Yeah.
We got introduced to each other through Jeff Berlin, who was in his band at the time, and I brought transcription for Pat of a tune that I had transcribed called Minority from his second album. And interestingly enough, Pat was off somewhere, and I showed it to Jeff, and he was floored by it, and he just loved the way it looked. He said, Pat's got to see this. It was a 12-page accordion-style chart of all his soloing, a lot of soloing. And ever since then, we've been friends. And, when I got to do the book on Pat, it was great. We had conversations about the music. And, of course, I've known him for years. So he used to live in L.A., and we got a chance to get together. And he tried to look me up when he came to town. And I tried to go see his performances. And sometimes we'd just be students of life together. Yeah,
he is.
He's one of my all-time favorites.
Oh,
period.
Ours, too. I mean, just... obviously a legend, brilliant musician, but, when you get to know him like we were privileged to do over the course of, we spent a lot of time together on his project here. Man, he's got some incredible ways of looking at the world.
Oh, his insights are
beautiful ways.
Beautiful, yes, very beautiful. There's a spiritual component to him that's amazing.
He really is. He's incredible. Okay, another question.
Yes.
Any tips on ear training? This is a good question for someone like yourself that's transcribed a million things.
I would say pick a genre that you feel comfortable with to begin your ear training. And then what I used to do is I used to drive around till I could hum it. If you can hum it, you can find it. Even if you slow, it's going to seem slow at first. You pick up one note. I mean, first time I tried to transcribe a very complicated Joe Pass solo, it was so hard I was almost in tears. I had to drive away and listen to the cassette tape. And then I got a different insight. So don't get into it too tunnel vision in the beginning. Of course, you should do all of your relating of notes to chords so you understand how notes and harmony work together. Some of that is in this course, but I'm not saying it for that reason. I'm saying that you should be able to recognize a ninth in a chord.
Yep.
That helps you when you're hearing a melody. It also helps you when you're trying to identify a chord. And the synthesis of those when you're performing live. Very useful.
So
asset.
would you learn the changes first and then start to work on the notes?
Yeah, it depends on the genre. Again, like a rock and roll song, you might want to get the basic riff and the rhythm structure. And then when it comes to the solo in a lot of those tunes, unless it's heavy-duty instrumental rock, like Yngwie or something, that's a song like an operatic piece. But anyway, if it's a pretty straight rock song, I would say learn the structure. Any prominent riffs, a tune like Day Tripper has a prominent riff, or any of those kind of tunes that have a riff, try to pick that out. And then if that's your genre. With jazz, you should learn your harmony and your particular style. Like if you like George Benson's style, you should learn some things about the way he plays, because that has a lot to do with the way he sounds. You're lucky nowadays because you've got YouTube videos of George with close-ups of his hands.
Yeah.
We never had that. I mean, you have to go see him
slow
live.
him down.
It's the only way. You could slow him down, that's true. So you can see all those very intricate moves he makes while he plays those phrases. And he's one of those people that definitely isn't intimidated by any box of the guitar.
No.
He just whips through it, and there's his ear just takes him there. So ear training is really a lot of it, in my opinion. You got to start with understanding things like how a melody functions against a chord. And those come from simple songs. You learn that. You can later identify anything, chromatic notes, displacements and all that stuff. If it's playing in a different key, if it's an alteration, substitution, you'll recognize all that. It just takes time. You learn pieces that are gateway pieces. I learned how to do some of the real altered stuff by transcribing John Coltrane and adapting it to the guitar. And so that helped me a lot with my vocabulary and ear.
Dan wants to know the best way to tackle, say, one of your transcription books, right? To learn in little segments. How would you approach learning one of your transcriptions from a book?
I would defer to the philosophy that Howard Roberts shared with me when he was doing GIT. Learn music slowly in segments. Practice that over and over again until you feel comfortable, then move on. Connect, link. When you can sing that melody and perform it, it becomes part of who you are. So then the transcription isn't out there anymore, it's now in here. You're part of it. And that will make you feel like you're with the music. That's a very important sense to develop. It can be developed. It is training. It's trainable. So you can cultivate that. I would say take any transcription. If it's got a particularly tricky part, break it down into smaller increments. If you have a long phrase like a Pat Martino phrase or a Wes Montgomery phrase or George Benson phrase, they have some longer lines that have a lot of intricacies and complex hand movements. So in that case, you have to learn those in segments.
So little bite-sized chunks, then connect them.
But think melodically so that the chunks you pick are actually like motifs. And that way those motifs will have extra value once you get beyond learning the transcription. You can make that part of what you do. A lot of what I play is based on motifs I picked up from my favorites, Kenny, West, Pat Martino, Joe Pass, John Coltrane, Cannonball Adderley, Charlie Parker. Those are the people that I got licks from. Not to mention Eric Clapton, of course, and everyone else like that.
All right, you ready to go back to, we're going to pull, I should talk about the trivia question one more time. Give
trivia
folks
question, sure.
one more chance. The trivia question is, Wolf arranged and performed guitar parts for a Burt Bacharach theatrical production in 2011. What was the title of that show? Click the link, enter the answer, not in the chat feed, but on the page that the link leads you to. We'll pick one person, give away a $100 TrueFire gift card. And really, this is designed to get you over to Wolf's website and mark it and check it out and live there for a while. All right, let's get back to Uncaged Jazz
Sure.
Improv. You do a lesson putting it all together. And Tommy, how much content do we have in this course?
I would say well over 3 hours, maybe close to 4.
All right, so we're between 3 and 4 hours of killer content in this course from Wolf. So we've only given you the tip of the iceberg, but is this one of the last lessons, Tommy, putting it all together?
Yeah, this is sort of the last section of the course. Wolf takes 3 or 4 tunes and gives you kind of full-blown performance studies on them.
Talk about your approach to this last section.
Okay, well, as we've gone through every phase, every bit of this, by the way, is all, again, real world. It's not a lot of exercises and fundamental things. I would recommend you go to other sources for that. This is more of a melodic, phrase-oriented course so that you can speak the language. In the final section, I chose 4 pieces, I believe, that have different grooves and different harmonic situations, and put the tastes of the Uncaged system within it. And that is what putting it all together means. It now is a sort of more of a stream of consciousness, where you're not really thinking so much of only the disparate elements, but you're actually thinking of how they work in a continuum.
Cool.
So that hopefully is the goal, because when you play a piece of music, you shouldn't just think, I think in compartments. You should let it sort of tell its story, and you tell its story with it.
Great. So one of my favorites in that section is Killer Joe. Will you do that?
Killer Joe, yeah. It always reminds me of Benny Golson, and Benny has been a person who has come up to UCLA a lot for the thrill of the kids, and this is one of his tunes that I just love playing on the gig. It always connects with people, and it's just a great song to play in general. It's a good one for somebody who is coming from blues or rock and wanting to get a taste of jazz, because there's a handful of jazz chords in the bridge, but most of the tune is just... And that's the vamp that I'll be playing over.
Okay, cool.
Even though you could play, when I do this on the gig, I do play the bridge for changes, but it's oftentimes played as a vamp. In this case, the vamp just is the same as a lot of rock tunes, you know.
Right.
They're just ninth chords instead of power chords.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's play.
that bridge was coming up.
Well, you handled it.
Well, thank you very much. Anyway, it's all good.
Yeah. So we are, no problem running a little over.
Oh, well.
We have announced a winner.
Oh,
and
winner.
Why don't you tell everyone the correct answer to, what was the title of the show you arranged and performed the guitar parts for Burt Bacharach? So
It was called Some Lovers.
Some Lovers. Cool. So that winner just was awarded a Nixternal is their username. You've got $100 in your account. I would highly recommend you go spend some of it on this pre-order. For the rest of you, 48 hours, you can use Wolf Live, pick up the pre-order of Uncaged Jazz Improv. You will not be disappointed. And also want to thank everyone for all your love, all those thumbs ups. If we get one more thumbs up, which helps spread the love, show the love, I will force Mr. Wolf Marshall to play us one of my favorite tunes on the way out. And in the meantime, while we wait for you to click that little thumbs up under the video screen, Wolf, tell us about that guitar, man.
Oh, this guitar. Yeah, this is my favorite jazz guitar, archtop, Gibson, vintage Gibson from 1964, L5 CES. It has the PAF pickups in it. It has a lot of meaning to me. I had a student years and years ago, actually was a friend first and became a student, and we've been friends forever. He's a scientist who worked on a top secret project in New Mexico, but that's neither here nor there. I just wanted to let you know he's far away and a very scholarly kind of guy.
Area 51?
No, it was in New Mexico.
Okay.
It was, that's Roswell you're thinking
Oh,
of.
Roswell,
Yeah,
Arizona.
yeah, I think Area 51's in Nevada.
Okay, maybe they moved it.
Maybe there's two of them.
Yeah.
Two dimensions.
Yeah.
But anyway, he always loved the guitar I had that was an Yngwie Malmsteen prototype that I had played on an Yngwie video years ago. And he was very much into that style. He had this guitar. And so we got to talking, and he brought over some West Montgomery one day. And I realized, this is just like the guitar I've always wanted. And so I started a hunt for it. And I said, I've got to find a 1964 L5. All the ones I tried were either cost prohibitive or they were not the same. They didn't feel the same, because that's the way Gibsons were. They were handmade in that period. They were basically like a custom guitar. So one day we talked, and he said, I don't know what kind of guitar you're looking for, but my wife and I would like to make sure that you get this guitar.
Wow.
Because I'm not using it.
Wow.
And he let me have it on permanent loan.
Wow.
And then one day he came and said, you know what, very shyly said, very politely, I'd really like to have that Yngwie guitar. Do you think we could trade? And we made a gentleman's trade, and it's been beautiful for both of us. So it has a lot of meaning, because I think of this great guy who I've known for years.
Yeah.
Who was just a brilliant player and also a wonderful composer, but a fantastic scientist and math guy.
Incredible. Well, it's a beautiful guitar.
Yeah, I love this instrument.
Who wouldn't want an L5, right?
It was just refretted too, so I love the way that I have a particularly great guy in San Diego area where I live named Jim Crawford, who works on all my guitars. He just makes it feel like butter.
And it sounds so perfect.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
It's
It is the
awesome.
stylistically correct thing to use when you. I think one of the a few that you would use for jazz to get that sound of like Wes or George Benson or an archtop player from that period. So I really like it. But you can also play blues on it. If you put lighter strings, I'm using 12s. You can bend. You can do. You can do. So you can bend the notes on it. It just requires a little more effort. Probably feels a little more like T-Bone Walker.
Yep. When you play out, what amp would you ideally like to play through?
I use a Fender Twin most of the time, but lately I've been playing a Henriksen. They've just made a new model that I've started using called the Forte, and it's tube front end solid state power amp, but it's very well dialed in. It has a beautiful tone, sounds a lot like a Fender Twin, and of course it's considerably lighter. But then again, I was just at NAMM, and Fender makes this new Twin Tone Master that weighs 35 pounds and looks and sounds like a Fender Twin, so You
What
know,
are you
it's an
gonna
evolving
do?
process.
It's
You know what I mean?
never ending.
I have
right?
just such a huge amount of amps and guitars that I got to ask myself, do I really need another one?
Yeah.
But anyway,
It's never about need, though. Really,
it's,
you know.
it's yeah.
It's whatever that is. It feels good. And do you ever use any pedals at all or
Oh, sure.
effects?
Oh,
What do you
sure. I
like
mean,
to
I have
use?
2 or 3 pedal boards at home that I use for a lot of other kinds of playing.
Yeah.
And some of that's on YouTube. You'll see me play other styles. Sometimes I'll use like a semi-hollow Sadowski model that feels like a 335, but it's about the size of a Les Paul. I'll use that for more rock fusion gigs, and then I'll use full-on, flangers, phasers, whatever it requires. Mostly now echo, reverb. I use a lot of reverb, good-sounding reverbs, and then just great front-end distortion or boosters for the gain sound. I like a lot of times to use the Zen Drive, which is a very nice complement. If you get a kind of a dry, sterile amp that has a good, clean tone, you can give it some beautiful oomph with that. I also endorse the BB by Exotics. The BB Plus
Nice.
is in my pedal board,
Yeah.
and a number of exotic stuff. I love their pedals.
Great, man. Well, first of all, thank you for.
You're welcome.
We are running late. I
I
appreciate your
know.
patience. We could go on forever, but maybe you'll come back and we'll keep doing some
I
more of
would
these
love
things.
to.
I hope you do personally, and I've got a feeling all of our students would also dig having you come back and explore anything you want to do. You like have an open canvas. You tell us what you want to do. That's what we'll do, man.
You're too good.
Just
Too good to me.
A pleasure to work with and a dream come true for us.
Thank you.
We did get a lot more than just one more thumbs up. So thanks to everybody out there for sticking with us, for the thumbs up, for the support, for the beautiful comments. Would you play us out with Round Midnight?
Oh, yeah, one of my favorites. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's a great track.